My wife Lisa stood in our kitchen doorway with that particular smile she wore when she was about to drop a bomb on my life. I'd seen it before, right before she announced we were hosting her entire family for Thanksgiving, or when she decided we needed to refinance the house without consulting me. This time, though, something in her green eyes told me this bomb was going to be bigger than usual. Michael, she said, her voice carrying that tone of forced casualness that always made my stomach clench. My best friend is joining us for Christmas dinner. Be mature about it. I looked up from my laptop where I'd been troubleshooting network issues for my tech support clients. 6 years of marriage had taught me to read between the lines of Lisa's announcements, and this one was loaded with subtext. Her best friend Alex, the college ex-boyfriend, who somehow managed to insert himself into every aspect of our lives, despite my repeated objections. Of course, I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. No problem at all. What she didn't know was that I had already formulated a plan that would turn this Christmas dinner into something nobody in my family would ever forget. You see, Lisa had been playing this game for months now. Daily text messages with Alex, weekly coffee dates, constant phone calls that she'd take in the other room. When I'd express my discomfort about her relationship with her ex-boyfriend, she'd roll her eyes and give me that patronizing smile. He's just a friend, Michael. God, you're so insecure. But friends don't text each other at midnight. Friends don't have inside jokes that make them giggle like teenagers. And friends definitely don't exclude their current partners from every single interaction. I'd done my homework on Alex Morrison. Successful tech entrepreneur, drives a Tesla, lives in one of those modern glass houses in Westport. And most importantly, he was engaged to a woman named Sophie Chen, a sharp-looking marketing executive who, according to her LinkedIn profile, had no idea her fiancé was playing emotional footsie with his college ex-girlfriend. Lisa was bustling around the kitchen now, her excitement barely contained. She'd been planning this dinner for weeks, making sure everything would be perfect for Alex's visit. New tablecloth, expensive wine, even a special playlist of what I suspected were songs that held meaning for them. So it's just going to be Alex? I asked innocently, taking a sip of my coffee. Yes, just Alex. Is that a problem? Her voice had that edge to it now, daring me to object. Not at all. The more the merrier, right? I smiled, and I could see the relief wash over her face. She'd been expecting a fight, preparing her usual arsenal of accusations about my jealousy and immaturity. What she didn't notice was the particular quality of my smile. If she'd been paying attention to her husband instead of fantasizing about her college boyfriend, she might have recognized it as the same smile I wore when I'd successfully debugged a particularly nasty piece of malware. That evening, I waited until Lisa was in the shower before pulling out my phone. A little social media detective work had given me Sophie Chen's contact information. I crafted my message carefully. Hi Sophie, I'm Michael, married to Lisa. She's invited Alex to our Christmas dinner, and I thought it would be wonderful if you could join us as his partner. Would love to meet you. Here's our address. Her response came within an hour. Hi Michael. I didn't know Alex was going to a Christmas dinner. I'd love to join. Thank you for thinking to include me. I stared at that message for a long moment. She didn't know. Alex had been planning to spend Christmas at my house with my wife and hadn't even mentioned it to his fiancée. The pieces of Lisa's little fantasy were already starting to crumble, and the show hadn't even begun yet. December 24th arrived with that crisp Connecticut winter weather that made everything look like a Christmas card. Our colonial house in Fairfield was decorated to Lisa's exacting standards. White lights wrapped around every banister, a massive tree dominating the living room, enough garland to choke a reindeer. Lisa had been in preparation mode for days, treating this dinner like it was a state dinner rather than a family gathering. She'd had her hair done, bought a new dress, a red number that she claimed was festive, but looked suspiciously like something she'd wear on a date. Are you sure you're okay with this? She asked me for the third time that morning, though her tone suggested she didn't really care about my answer. Lisa, I told you, I'm fine with it. Actually, I'm looking forward to meeting your friend properly. I was scrambling eggs for breakfast, keeping my voice light and cheerful. She studied my face suspiciously. 6 years of marriage had made her attuned to my moods, and my unexpected cooperation was clearly throwing her off balance. You're being weird about this, she said finally. How am I being weird? You want me to be mature about your friendship with Alex, so I'm being mature. Isn't that what you wanted? She couldn't argue with that logic, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. Lisa was smart. It's one of the things that attracted me to her in the first place. But her intelligence was compromised by her emotional investment in this situation. She wanted so badly for this dinner to go perfectly that she was willing to overlook the obvious red flags. My phone buzzed with a text from my brother Tom. Still can't believe you're letting that guy come to Christmas dinner. You're either a saint or an idiot. I texted back, neither, just wait and see. The guests started arriving around 2 o'clock. My parents came first, Dad carrying his traditional bottle of bourbon, Mom with her famous apple pie. They were followed by Lisa's parents, Joyce and Frank, who always made me feel like I wasn't quite good enough for their daughter. "Where's this friend of Lisa's?" Joyce asked, looking around the living room, as if Alex might be hiding behind the Christmas tree. "He should be here soon," Lisa answered, her voice tight with anticipation. Tom and his wife Janet arrived next, along with my teenage nephew Danny, who immediately disappeared into the basement with his phone. The living room was filling up with the comfortable chaos of family, conversations overlapping, kids running around, the smell of turkey wafting from the kitchen. At exactly 4 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Lisa practically sprinted to the door, smoothing her hair and checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. When she opened it, Alex Morrison stood there looking like he'd stepped out of a catalog. Perfectly styled dark hair, expensive cashmere coat, holding a bottle of wine that probably cost more than most people's weekly grocery budget. "Alex!" Lisa's voice was bright with genuine joy as she threw her arms around him. The hug lasted just a beat too long, and I saw my mother raise an eyebrow. "Lisa, you look amazing," Alex said, his hands lingering on her waist as they separated. "Thank you so much for inviting me." He stepped into the foyer, and I appeared in the doorway to the living room, wearing my most welcoming smile. "Alex, great to see you again, man." I extended my hand, and he shook it with the kind of firm grip that was supposed to convey confidence, but just felt aggressive. "Michael, thanks for having me. This is really generous of you." "Oh, and your fiancé should be here any minute," I said casually, as if I was mentioning that it might rain later. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Alex's face went through several color changes, from normal to pale to slightly green. Lisa's mouth actually fell open. Alex's voice cracked slightly on the word. "Your fiancée, Sophie. I invited her to join us. I thought she should be here as your partner." I kept my tone light and reasonable, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. Lisa was staring at me like I'd just announced I was joining the circus. "You invited Sophie?" "Well, yes. Alex is engaged, right?" It seemed rude not to include his fiancée in a family gathering. Before anyone could respond, the doorbell rang again. This time I answered it, and Sophie Chen stood on my doorstep looking elegant and poised in a navy blue coat, carrying a beautifully wrapped gift and a bottle of champagne. "Hi, you must be Michael." Her smile was warm and genuine. "I'm Sophie. Thank you so much for inviting me. I've been looking forward to meeting Lisa." "Sophie, wonderful to meet you. Come in, come in." I led her into the foyer, where Alex and Lisa stood frozen like deer in headlights. The contrast was stark. Sophie looked radiant and happy to be there, while Alex looked like he was about to be sick, and Lisa appeared to be calculating whether she could murder me and dispose of the body before dinner. "Baby," Sophie moved toward Alex with obvious affection. "What a nice surprise. I didn't know you were coming to a Christmas dinner." Alex's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Sophie, I didn't know Michael had invited you." Sophie's smile faltered slightly as she looked between Alex and Lisa, clearly picking up on the tension. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's perfect," I said cheerfully. "Come on, let me introduce you to everyone." The living room had gone from comfortable family chaos to the kind of tense silence you usually only see in hostage situations. My parents, Lisa's parents, Tom and Janet, everyone could sense that something was seriously wrong, but nobody quite knew what. Sophie, bless her heart, was trying to make the best of an obviously awkward situation. She'd introduced herself to everyone with genuine warmth, complimented my mother on the house decorations, and engaged Lisa's father in conversation about his work in construction management. Lisa, meanwhile, had positioned herself as far from Sophie as possible, while still being in the same room. She kept shooting me looks that could have melted steel, but I just smiled back innocently. Alex looked like he wanted to crawl under the coffee table and disappear. Every time Sophie addressed him directly, he'd jump slightly, as if he'd forgotten she was there. "So Alex," my father said, settling into his favorite armchair with his bourbon, "what kind of business are you in?" "Tech consulting," Alex managed, his voice still not quite steady. "That's how he and Lisa know each other," I added helpfully. They were college sweethearts, stayed close friends all these years. Sophie's head turned sharply toward Alex. College sweethearts. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. We dated briefly in college, Lisa said quickly, her voice artificially bright. Ancient history. Briefly. Sophie's voice was still pleasant, but there was steel underneath now. Alex told me you two were together for 3 years. Lisa's face flushed red. Well, I mean, it was college. You know how college relationships are. Actually, I don't, Sophie replied calmly. I met Alex after college. But 3 years doesn't sound brief to me. My mother was watching this exchange with the fascination of someone watching a car crash in slow motion. Tom was trying not to smirk. Joyce looked like she was reconsidering every life choice that had led to this moment. Should we move to the dining room? I suggested. Dinner's ready. The dining room table had been set with Lisa's good china and crystal glasses. She'd arranged the seating carefully. Alex was supposed to be next to her, with me safely on the other side of the table. But with Sophie's unexpected presence, the whole dynamic had shifted. I took charge of the seating arrangements. Alex, why don't you sit here? And Sophie, you're right next to him. Lisa, you're here, and I'm across from you. Heh, it was perfect. Alex and Sophie were together, but Lisa was close enough to Alex that every interaction between him and his fiancée would be torture for her. As we passed around the turkey and stuffing, Sophie continued her gentle interrogation. So you two have stayed close all these years? She asked Lisa. We're very good friends, Lisa replied, her voice tight. That's nice. Do you do things together often? We have coffee sometimes. Text occasionally. I nearly choked on my wine. Occasionally? Lisa's phone buzzed with messages from Alex at least 10 times a day. How often is occasionally? Sophie pressed. Alex was cutting his turkey with the intensity of a surgeon performing brain surgery, clearly hoping the conversation would move on to safer topics. I don't know, maybe once a week? Lisa's voice had gone up an octave. Sophie nodded thoughtfully. And Alex, you never mentioned having weekly coffee dates with your ex-girlfriend. The word ex-girlfriend hung in the air like a toxic cloud. It's not, we don't really. Alex was floundering. They text quite a bit too, I added conversationally. Lisa's always getting messages from Alex. Day and night, really. Lisa's eyes were shooting daggers at me, but I was committed to my role as the helpful, transparent husband. Sophie set down her fork. Day and night? Michael's exaggerating, Lisa said quickly. Am I? I pulled out my phone. Because just this morning, you got a text from Alex that said, "Can't wait to see you today, beautiful." The silence that followed was so complete, you could have heard a pin drop in the next county. Sophie turned to look at Alex with an expression that could have frozen lava. Beautiful? That's not. I call everyone beautiful, Alex stammered. You call everyone beautiful? Sophie's voice was deadly quiet now. No, I mean, it's just a friendly thing. You text other women and call them beautiful? Lisa jumped in, trying to salvage the situation. It's just how Alex talks. He doesn't mean anything by it. Sophie's gaze shifted to Lisa. And how would you know how Alex talks to other women? It was a masterful question. Lisa had just admitted that she knew Alex well enough to explain his communication style with other women, which implied a level of intimacy that went way beyond casual friendship. I just meant. Lisa was backpedaling frantically. You know what? Sophie stood up, her composure finally cracking. I think I'm starting to understand what's going on here. Sophie remained standing, her hands placed flat on the table as she looked back and forth between Alex and Lisa. The rest of the family sat in stunned silence, dinner forgotten, watching what was clearly about to become a legendary family disaster. Alex, Sophie's voice was calm but deadly. I want you to explain to me, right now, why you're having weekly coffee dates and daily text conversations with your ex-girlfriend, and why you never thought to mention any of this to me. Alex looked like he was going to be sick. Sophie, it's not what you think, really. Because what I think is that my fiancé has been having an emotional affair with his college girlfriend, and I'm the last person to know about it. Lisa shot to her feet. It's not an affair. We're friends. Friends. Sophie turned her attention to Lisa. Friends who text each other "Good morning, beautiful," and "Can't wait to see you"? Friends who exclude their romantic partners from their relationship? You're taking this all wrong, Lisa protested. Am I? Then explain to me why Alex never mentioned that he was coming to Christmas dinner with his friend. Explain why he's never invited me to join one of your coffee dates. Explain why he has never, not once, suggested that we all hang out together. The questions hung in the air like accusations, and they were devastating because they were completely logical. Sophie was systematically dismantling the fiction that Lisa and Alex had built around their relationship. My mother cleared her throat. Maybe we should. No, Sophie interrupted, her voice sharp. I want answers. Alex, I'm your fiancé. We're supposed to get married in 6 months. Don't you think I deserve to know the truth about your relationship with this woman? Alex was sweating now, despite the fact that the dining room was actually quite cool. Sophie, you're making this into something it's not. Then what is it exactly? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been carrying on a relationship with your ex-girlfriend behind my back. Lisa's face was flushed with anger and embarrassment. This is ridiculous. Michael, tell her she's being crazy. All eyes turned to me. This was my moment, the culmination of months of watching my wife prioritize another man over our marriage. Actually, I said slowly, I think Sophie's questions are pretty reasonable. I've been wondering about some of these things myself. Lisa stared at me in shock. Michael, what? You text Alex constantly. You meet him for coffee every week. You talk about him all the time. And when I express any discomfort with it, you tell me I'm being jealous and insecure. Because you are being jealous and insecure. Maybe I am, I admitted. But maybe I have good reason to be. Sophie was watching this exchange with growing understanding. So this has been going on for a while? Months, I confirmed. Lisa's been very invested in her friendship with Alex. We're close friends. Lisa's voice was getting shrill now. There's nothing wrong with being close friends with an ex. There is when you're married to someone else, my father said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. Dad wasn't usually one to get involved in family drama, but apparently even he had his limits. Frank's right, Joyce said, speaking for the first time since the disaster had begun. Lisa, honey, this doesn't look good. Lisa whirled on her mother. Mom, you're supposed to be on my side. I am on your side. That's why I'm telling you this looks bad. You're a married woman having secret coffee dates with your ex-boyfriend. They're not secret. Then why didn't you ever invite Michael? Sophie asked. Lisa's mouth opened and closed without any sound coming out. That's what I thought, Sophie said grimly. She turned back to Alex. And you're engaged to me, but you're spending your free time texting and meeting with your ex-girlfriend. Did you think I would never find out? Sophie, please, let me explain. Explain what? Explain why you've been lying to me for months? Explain why you were planning to spend Christmas with her without even mentioning it to me. Alex had no answer for that. Sophie picked up her purse. I think I've heard enough. Sophie, wait. Alex stood up, reaching for her arm. She jerked away from him. Don't touch me. Please, can we just talk about this privately? Privately? Like how you and Lisa have been talking privately for months? Sophie's composure finally cracked completely. You know what, Alex? If you want to be with Lisa so badly, then be with Lisa. But don't expect me to stick around and watch. She headed for the door, Alex following behind her, pleading. Sophie, please, you're misunderstanding everything. Am I? Because it seems pretty clear to me. She turned back one last time, looking at Lisa. You can have him. Congratulations. The front door slammed behind them, and we could hear Alex's voice in the driveway, growing more desperate as Sophie presumably got in her car and drove away. When Alex came back inside a few minutes later, his face was ashen. She's gone, he said to no one in particular. Lisa burst into tears. The rest of Christmas dinner was a surreal experience. We sat around the table picking at our food while Lisa sobbed into her napkin and Alex stared at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. My family, to their credit, tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Tom made awkward small talk about his job. Janet complimented the turkey. My mother asked if anyone wanted more wine. But the elephant in the room, or rather, the destroyed relationship in the room, was impossible to ignore. Finally, Joyce stood up. I think we should go. Mom, no, please. Lisa looked up from her tear-soaked napkin. Honey, this dinner is over. Frank, get your coat. Lisa's parents left first, followed quickly by my parents, who gave me sympathetic looks and promised to call later. Tom lingered long enough to whisper, Dude, that was brutal, but kind of brilliant. Soon it was just me, Lisa and Alex, sitting in the wreckage of what was supposed to be a perfect Christmas dinner. Alex was the first to speak. I should go. Alex, no. Lisa reached for his hand. We need to talk about this. He pulled his hand away. Lisa, my fiancé just left me. Because of us. Because of him, Lisa pointed at me accusingly. Michael orchestrated this whole thing. Did I? I asked mildly. All I did was invite Alex's fiancée to dinner. If your relationship was as innocent as you claim, that shouldn't have been a problem. You knew exactly what would happen. I knew that Sophie deserved to know how much time her fiancé was spending with his ex-girlfriend. I thought she had a right to know about your friendship. And Alex stood up abruptly. This is insane. Sophie's gone, Lisa. She's actually gone. She took off her engagement ring and threw it at me in the driveway, and Lisa's face crumpled. Alex, I'm so sorry. Are you? Because this is what you wanted, isn't it? You wanted me to choose between you and Sophie. I never said that. You didn't have to say it. Every text, every coffee date, every time you called me when you knew Sophie was around, you were making me choose. I watched this exchange with fascination. Alex was finally seeing Lisa clearly, without the romantic haze that had been clouding his judgment. That's not true, Lisa protested weakly. Isn't it? Be honest, Lisa. What did you think was going to happen here? Did you think we were going to keep this up forever? Secret meetings and hidden conversations while I planned a wedding with another woman? Lisa didn't answer, but her silence was answer enough. Alex shook his head. I need to go. I need to figure out if there's any way to fix things with Sophie. What about us? Lisa's voice was small. What about us? Lisa, you're married. I was engaged. There is no us. He left without another word, and Lisa dissolved into fresh tears. Are you happy now? She asked me through her sobs. I considered the question seriously. Was I happy? I was satisfied, certainly. Justice had been served. The elaborate emotional affair that had been poisoning my marriage had been exposed and destroyed. But happy? That was more complicated. I'm relieved, I said finally. I'm relieved that I don't have to pretend anymore that I'm okay with my wife being in love with another man. I'm not in love with Alex. Lisa, stop. Just stop. We both know that's not true. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. What happens now? I don't know, I admitted. But at least now we're dealing with the truth instead of living in your fantasy. The week between Christmas and New Year's was the longest of my life. Lisa barely spoke to me, spending most of her time locked in our bedroom or at her sister's house. When she was home, she moved through the house like a ghost, pale and hollow-eyed. I heard through the family grapevine that the Christmas dinner disaster had become legendary. My mother called to check on me. Tom texted regularly with updates from his wife, who apparently had friends who knew Sophie and Alex. The news wasn't good for the former couple. Sophie had moved out of their shared apartment and was staying with her sister. Alex had been calling and texting frantically, but she wasn't responding. According to Janet's sources, Sophie had told her friends that she felt like a fool for not seeing the signs earlier. Lisa's emotional state deteriorated as the days passed. She'd lost Alex, who was apparently too focused on trying to win back Sophie to spare much thought for the woman who'd cost him his relationship. She'd also lost the moral high ground in our marriage. It's hard to claim your husband is paranoid and controlling when your innocent friendship has just destroyed someone else's engagement. On New Year's Eve, she finally tried to talk to me. Michael, she said, standing in the doorway of my home office where I was catching up on work. We need to discuss what happened. I looked up from my computer. Okay, what would you like to discuss? You humiliated me in front of our entire family. I invited Alex's fiancée to dinner. How is that humiliating you? You know what you did. You set me up. I exposed the truth about your relationship with Alex. If that's humiliating, maybe you should think about why. She came into the room and sat down across from my desk. I never cheated on you. Physically, maybe not. But emotionally, Lisa, you've been having an affair for months. It wasn't an affair. What would you call it then? You were in a romantic relationship with another man while married to me. You prioritized his feelings over mine. You snuck around to see him. You exchanged intimate messages. If that's not an affair, what is? She was quiet for a long moment. I loved him, she said finally, so quietly I almost didn't hear her. I know. I still love him. I know that too. But I love you too. Differently, but I do love you. I leaned back in my chair, studying my wife's face. She looked genuinely anguished, and I felt a flicker of sympathy for her. But sympathy wasn't enough to rebuild a marriage. Lisa, you can't love two people at the same time and expect it to work out. You made a choice to pursue Alex while staying married to me. That choice had consequences. So what are you saying? You want a divorce? I'm saying that our marriage, as it was, is over. You killed it when you decided Alex was more important than I was. Tears started flowing down her cheeks again. I never said he was more important. You didn't have to say it. You showed it every day for months. Every time you chose to text him instead of talking to me. Every time you canceled our plans to meet him for coffee. Every time you defended him when I expressed my concerns. I can end it with Alex. I can cut off all contact. Can you? Because from what I've seen, he's not exactly fighting to maintain your friendship now that it's cost him his relationship with Sophie. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. Besides, I continued, it's too late for that. The damage is done. I can't trust you anymore, Lisa. How could I? You've proven that you're willing to lie to me, sneak around behind my back, and prioritize another man's feelings over our marriage. People make mistakes, Michael. Marriages survive affairs all the time. Some do, but those marriages survive because the cheating spouse takes full responsibility for their actions and does the work to rebuild trust. You're still trying to minimize what you did and blame me for exposing it. She sat in silence for several minutes, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, she whispered finally. I know you are, but sorry doesn't fix this. So that's it? 6 years of marriage, and you're just going to throw it away? I'm not throwing anything away. You already threw it away when you decided to pursue Alex. I'm just acknowledging reality. She stood up slowly, like an old woman. I'll stay at my sister's tonight. We can figure out the logistics later. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, staring out the window at our snow-covered yard. The Christmas lights were still up, but they looked sad and abandoned now, like decorations for a party that had been canceled. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom. How are you holding up? I typed back. Better than expected. And it was true. I felt lighter somehow, like I'd been carrying a heavy weight for months and had finally been able to set it down. The marriage was over, but the uncertainty was over too. No more wondering if my wife was texting her ex-boyfriend. No more pretending to believe her lies about their friendship. No more feeling like I was going crazy for being bothered by behavior that any reasonable person would find inappropriate. The truth had set me free, even if it had destroyed everything else in the process. 3 months later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office, signing the final divorce papers. Lisa and I had managed to keep things relatively civil. She'd moved in with her sister, we'd divided our assets without too much drama, and she'd finally admitted that our marriage had been over long before Christmas dinner. Any regrets? My lawyer, Patricia Martinez, asked as I signed the last document. About the divorce? No. About the way it happened? I paused, considering. Maybe. It was pretty brutal. Sometimes brutal is necessary. You could have spent years trying to fix a marriage where your wife was emotionally involved with someone else. She was right. The Christmas dinner disaster had been painful for everyone involved, but it had also been efficient. One evening had accomplished what months of marriage counseling might not have been able to do. It had forced everyone to face the truth about the situation. I'd heard through the grapevine that Alex had never managed to reconcile with Sophie. She'd moved back to California and was reportedly doing very well in her new job. Alex had tried to reconnect with Lisa after his relationship with Sophie ended. But Lisa had apparently realized that he was only interested in her as a consolation prize. Their great romance had fizzled out within weeks, once it was no longer forbidden and exciting. As for Lisa, she was dating someone new, a divorced father she'd met through work. According to my mother, who still kept in touch with Joyce, Lisa seemed happy, but had learned to be more discreet about her relationships. What's next for you? Patricia asked as she gathered up the papers. I'm not sure. Focus on work, maybe travel a bit. I've got some friends who've been trying to set me up, but I'm not ready for that yet. That's smart. Take some time to figure out what you want in a relationship before jumping into a new one. Walking out of the lawyer's office, I felt a sense of closure that had been missing for months. The marriage was officially over, but I was finally ready to move forward. My phone rang as I got to my car. It was Tom. How did it go? It's done. Officially divorced as of about 10 minutes ago. How do you feel? Free, I said, and realized it was completely true. Good. Listen, Janet's got a friend she wants you to meet. Nothing serious, just coffee. She's a teacher, recently divorced, no crazy ex-boyfriends as far as we know. I laughed. Maybe in a few months. I need some time to remember what it's like to be single. Fair enough, but when you're ready, let us know. We've got a whole list of potential candidates. After hanging up, I drove home to my empty house. Lisa had taken most of the furniture, so it was sparse but peaceful. I'd kept the Christmas decorations in storage this year. Too many memories associated with them. But as I looked around at my quiet, drama-free living space, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: optimism. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. No more walking on eggshells, no more wondering what my wife was really thinking, no more competing with a ghost from her past. I'd learned something important from the whole experience. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to stop trying to save the relationship. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to force everyone involved to face the truth, no matter how painful that truth might be. The Christmas dinner that destroyed my marriage had been the best thing that ever happened to me. It had freed me from a relationship that was slowly killing my self-respect and opened up possibilities I hadn't even known I was missing. 6 months later, I did eventually meet Janet's friend Sarah, the teacher with no crazy ex-boyfriends. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared experiences with difficult divorces and our mutual appreciation for honest communication. When she told me about her ex-husband's gambling addiction and the lies that had destroyed their marriage, I told her about Lisa and Alex and the Christmas dinner that changed everything. "You invited his fiancée to dinner?" Sarah laughed, nearly spitting out her coffee. "That's brilliant. Brutal, but brilliant." "I prefer to think of it as efficient," I said. "Why drag out the inevitable?" "I like that. No drama, no games, just the truth." "Exactly. Life's too short to waste time on people who aren't honest with you." Sarah raised her coffee cup in a mock toast. "To honesty, then." "To honesty," I agreed, clinking my cup against hers. And as I looked into her clear, direct gaze, so different from Lisa's calculating looks, I knew I'd made the right choice that Christmas evening. Sometimes destroying something broken is the only way to make room for something better. The Christmas dinner that ended my marriage had taught me the most valuable lesson of my adult life. The truth might be painful, but it's always better than living a lie. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to face that truth and act on it, you might just find that what seemed like an ending was really a beginning.